אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדום, אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו המצר קראתיה ענני ומרחביה מן המצר קראתיה ענני ומרחביה עודך כי ענית אני ותהי לי לישועה. עודך כי ענית אני ותהי לי ותהי לי לישועה. ענני, 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 answer me. ענני, 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 answer me. ענני, 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 answer me. ענני, 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 מן המצר קראתיה ענני ומרחביה מן המצר קראתיה ענני ומרחביה עודך כי ענית אני ותהי לי לישועה. עודך כי ענית אני ותהי לי ותהי לי לישועה. ענני, 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 answer me. ענני, 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 answer me. ענני, 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 answer me. ענני, 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 I call out to you from a narrow place. Your answer came to me from a wide open space. My heart cried out for you wherever you are. Your hand reached out to me min hametzar. Aneni, 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 answer me. Aneni, aneni. answer me. Aneni, 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 answer me. Aneni, aneni, aneni. Min hametzah. Shiru l'Adonai, shir chadsh.
We begin this evening on page 86. Like no other prayer, Kol Nidre compels our presence, and not just us alone, but the memorized outline, too, of younger years, the gentle feel of those who tucked us in, who blessed our days, consoled our nights, and came, as we do, on this eve, with memories of their own. We tonight are memories in the making, warming seats for others who will remember us in some Kol Nidre they shall hear when we are gone.
Present too among us are memories more recent of what we did or said or were or weren't since last year at this time, of what we learned or lost, of kisses that we gave or got, the laugh that lovers recognize. The days of empty wandering and wondering where God was, or knowing with compelling certainty that God was with us, even in despair.
Kol Nidre harbors memory of all this. Its melody persists, insists, commands, and summons our acknowledgement of time. What we recall of others past, and what we vow to leave behind for others still to come who will remember us. We kindle this memorial light for those we loved and those we lost, for all we miss from the year now gone. Let us prepare for Kol Nidre, our song of memory.
With deep gratitude to our member Julian Schwartz for bringing the gift of that Kol Nidre to life on the cello. We now bring in the light of this holiday, the lighting of the festival candles. Invite Susan to come up. We join together on page 87 as we bring in and bless these lights.
במצוותיו Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, שהחיינו וקיימנו והחיינו לזמן הזה.
It is so fitting to begin this holiday with beautiful music, with festival lights, and with the Shehechianu, giving thanks that we are here, that we have made it, that we are able to be at this occasion. It is such a gift to see all of you here. We were worried that maybe it would be too crowded, and then we were worried it would maybe be too empty. Well, it's just perfect. You're all perfect. We're so happy that you are here with us tonight. I think there is something about Kol Nidre, this service, that melody. It brings us all back. Maybe it brings us back to our memory, or it brings us back to our loved ones. It brings us back to our tradition. And we hope it brings us back to our best selves. That is the work that this melody can do if we let it enter into our heart as it plays 3 times through this service in different ways, and as we let this ancient call to our best selves and to return be heard. We continue now with our call to worship on page 88. Please rise.
We continue reading together at the bottom of the page. Blessed are you, eternal God, from whom the evening flows. We find you in the mysteries of time, the passage of seasons, the night sky and all its wonders. You roll light away from darkness, and darkness from light, causing day to pass and twilight to fall. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. Blessed are you, O God, from whom the evening flows. In just a moment, we'll continue together singing the Shema. On all other days of the Jewish calendar, we recite this prayer, the second line, silently, quietly to ourselves. But on Yom Kippur, it is the one day that we recite that second line out loud in full, strong voice. We do this to recall the ancient temple and the way that we used to act there on Yom Kippur. The high priest would stand before the crowds who had all come to celebrate in the Yom Kippur ritual, and there the high priest would recite God's name, and then the entire population would reply loudly, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. And so we'll do the same thing tonight, walking in the ways of our ancestors and uniting our voices and memories with generations past. So we close our eyes and sing out these words that have bound Jews together and also Jews to their God for millennia.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
Please be seated. We continue together on page 92. You shall love your eternal God with all your mind, with all your strength, and with all your being. Set these words which I command you this day upon your heart. Teach them faithfully to your children. Speak of them in your home and on your way, when you lie down and when you rise up. Bind them as a sign upon your hand, and let them be a symbol before your eyes. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Be mindful of all my mitzvot and do them. So shall you consecrate yourselves to your God. I am your eternal God, who led you out of Egypt to be your God. I am your eternal God. Someone once asked, why in our worship do we continually remind ourselves of past moments in the life of the people Israel? Why do we continue to recount them over and over again? Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel explained it this way. He said, we are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time. And so as we rejoice in our freedom, we learn to yearn for the freedom of all of those who are in chains, as we sing together on page 93.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. מלאכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים, זה לי ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני,
ברוך הוא וברוך שמו,
גל ישראל.
On page 94, we ask for God's sheltering presence.
השכיבנו, אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, לשלום. השכיבנו, השכיבנו, אדוני אלוהינו לשלום.
והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים ולשלום, ולשלום. השכיבנו, השכיבנו, אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך,
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו,
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום. אדוני אלוהינו לשלום.
Tonight we face our nakedness, mirrored contemplations of concealed selves laid bare of artifice, backdrop to a cavernous silence broken only by the quiet chant of Kol Nidre. This is the time when consciousness colludes with conscience to shatter the delusions with which we cloak our souls. Tonight God asks us where and what we are.
We creatures fashioned in God's goodness are capable of cruelty. We vessels of God's holiness litter others' lives with profanities of speech and deed and will. The nakedness of Kol Nidre's call can pierce our metal, unsettling us with echoes of the chaos we have caused, the brokenness of loved ones at whose lives we chipped away.
Give us pause to recognize how every year we choose again to grow more worn and withered, dry inside, or stronger, older, far more resolute, awake to what should matter most. Which shall it be? Kol Nidre sounds especially pure to souls who have lost their way or find themselves enmeshed in webs of hopelessness. God, disentangle us, we pray. Where we have sinned, remove the shame of self and make us worthy of Kol Nidre's melody. Please rise.
חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו זוכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וכותבנו בספר החיים, למענך אלוהים חיים. למענך, למענך, למענך אלוהים חיים. למענך, למענך, למענך אלוהים חיים. Remember us unto life, O God of all, who delights in life. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני,
Baruch Shema.
מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה.
We turn to page 98 and read together at the top of the page. Adonai, our God, is merciful and gracious, endlessly patient, loving and true, showing mercy to thousands, forgiving iniquity, transgression and sin, and granting pardon.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rahum v'Chanun, Erech Apayim v'Rav Chesed v'Emet, Notzer Chesed la'alafim.
Our God, God of our mothers and fathers, grant that our prayers may reach you. Do not be deaf to our pleas, for we are not so arrogant and stiff-necked as to say before you, our God and God of all ages, we are perfect and have not sinned. Rather, do we confess, we have gone astray, we have sinned, we have transgressed.
Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'imotenu, tavo lefanecha tefilateinu, ve'al titalam mitchinateinu, she'en anachnu azefanim ukshei oref lomar lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu tzadikim anachnu ve'lo chatanu Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu dofi, ay 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 hevinu vehirshanu zadnu chamasnu tafalnu shaker ay 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 Yatsnora Kizavnu Latsnu Maradnu Niatsnu ay 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 Avinu,
Avinu,
Pashanu,
Pashanu,
Tsararnu,
Sararnu,
Kishinu Oref.
Kishinu Oref,
Ay, 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 Rashanu,
Rashanu,
Shichatnu,
Shichatnu,
Tiavnu,
Tiavnu,
Tainu,
Tainu,
Titanu.
We abuse, we betray, we are cruel, we destroy.
We embitter, we falsify, we gossip, we hate.
We insult, we jeer, we kill, we lie, we mock.
We neglect, we oppress, we pervert, we quarrel.
We rebel, we steal, we transgress, we are unkind.
We are violent, we are wicked, we are extremists.
We yearn to do evil, we are zealous for bad causes.
For all these sins, O God of mercy, forgive us, pardon us, and
grant us atonement.
ועל כולם אלו הסליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו, ועל כולם סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בנטיית גרון,
For the sins we have committed against you through arrogance and selfishness.
מעל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בהונאת ראיה,
For the sins we have committed against you by defrauding others.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בכחש ובכזב,
For the sins we have committed against you through denial and deceit.
מעל חטא שחטאנו לפניך במאכל ובמשתה,
For the sins we have committed against you through greed and overindulgence.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך באימוץ הלב,
For the sins we have committed against you through hardening our hearts.
ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בחנופה,
For the sins we have committed against you through hypocrisy.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בצרות עין,
For the sins we have committed against you by narrow-mindedness.
ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בגילוי עריות,
For the sins we have committed against you through sex and love.
ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בווידוי פה,
For the sins we have committed against you through empty confession. For all these sins, O God of mercy, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement.
ועל כולם אלו הסליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו, ועל כולם אלו סלח לנו, מחלנו, סלח לנו, מחלנו,
Please be seated. Hear our voice, Adonai, our God. Be kind, sympathize with us, willingly and lovingly accept our prayer.
Turn us toward you, Adonai, and we will return to you. Make our days seem fresh as they once were.
Do not cast us away from you. Do not take your holy presence from us.
Do not cast us away as we grow old.
Do not desert us as our life ends. Do not abandon us, Adonai, our God. Do not distance yourself from us.
Give us hope,
be our help and comfort. Hear our words, Adonai, and consider our innermost thoughts.
May the
words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, Adonai, my rock and my redeemer.
וקבל ברחמים, ברחמים וברצון. וקבל ברחמים וברצון. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה חדש ימינו
We continue in silence.
continue on page 103. The accident of mortality makes life an interim of expulsion, as quickened dust and ashes bookended by eternities. We were thrust at birth onto a stage as actors, unprepared for roles we never sought to have. With every day's performance, we edge closer to the final bow.
But we Jews are well practiced in the art of exile, how to be at peace wherever we may be, secured by goodness, love, and learning, gratitude and dignity, empathy for suffering, integrity and kindness, the bricks and mortar of authentic Jewish coming home. Return to these Kol Nidre charges before lights go out and stage is darkened.
Tonight, the world of things, events, expectations retreats from consciousness, that we may honestly confront what we have been, where we have gone, what we are worth, if we have failed. We pray that at this time tomorrow night, when Ark doors open for Ne'ilah, our final service of these days of awe, we may reclaim the promise we once knew we had. Tonight, at home with God and with one another, we pause for clarity of purpose en route to that rebirth.
And now, let us welcome back our Torahs to the Ark as we prepare to hear the full Kol Nidre. Please rise.
Are you a God? Are you a God? This question is posed by Gozer the Gozerian to Ray Stantz, one of the Ghostbusters. It's an iconic moment in the 1980s comedy. At the top of a building on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, Gozer the Gozerian is ready to destroy New York City. But standing in the demigod's way are the Ghostbusters. Ray has just issued a demand that Gozer leave the city. And unsure of who they are, Gozer asks Ray, "Are you a God?" Ray, confused and unsure, replies, "No?" At which point Gozer cries out, "Then die!" And lightning bolts shoot from her fingers and send the Ghostbusters hurling across the way. And when they land, Winston, a fellow Ghostbuster, shares sage advice with Ray, words that have stood the test of time, quoted by philosophers and poets alike. Winston said, "Ray, when someone asks you if you're a God, you say, 'Yes.'" That question, though it comes from an unlikely source, is one I would like us to take seriously tonight. Are you a God? Now, viscerally, we bristle at that question's very premise. Judaism forbids us from making any image of God. God is formless. God transcends time and space. No, Judaism is unequivocal. God is not human. God is not at all like humanity. And yet, what I want us to ask is, can humanity be like God nonetheless? Are we like God? And despite what you may be feeling in your kishkis about me asking, that question is not as heretical as it sounds. The idea that humanity could be godlike is implied in the Torah itself. At the beginning of all things, in the Garden of Eden, the serpent explained to Eve that should she eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge, V'item ke Elohim yodei tov v'ra, ye humans shall be like God, who knows good from bad. And the serpent was speaking the truth. You see, in the Garden of Eden, God created two paths for humanity to become like God, each embodied by a tree. Eat from the tree of life and live forever here in the garden. Or eat from the tree of knowledge, learn the difference between good and evil, and go out into the world. We had to choose which way we would become godlike. And we chose morality rather than immortality. Humans became like God not by living forever, but by being able to distinguish between good and evil. And while Christianity views this as the great fall from paradise, Judaism maintains a much wider interpretation of this moment. You see, eating from that fruit from the tree of knowledge, that was not a sin. It was what God hoped we would do. God wished more than anything that humanity would choose moral understanding, and then, along with God, seek to create a good world. What God wants and what Judaism expects is that we will use our godlike power of morality to imitate or to play God. And that phrase, play God, has some baggage that we need to address. Right? In the modern Western world, the idea of playing God is an accusation. It has a negative connotation. Who are you to play God? We might hear someone call out. Because in our society, to play God is to misuse power we have no business wielding. But Judaism's concept of playing God is radically different from this. For Jews, playing God is not an accusation, it's an aspiration. Lalechet b'chol derachav, walk in God's ways, declares the Torah. We are commanded to play God in the world, to make use of our godlike power. In fact, if ever there was a mission statement for all of the Jewish people across all streams of Judaism and across all time, this is it. Go play God. Now, there's a little bit more baggage that we need to deal with. Frequently, someone meets with me and sheepishly or quite stridently shares that they do not believe in God. And I assure them they are not alone. We won't do an informal poll right here and now, but I have a good feeling they'd be in really good company. But more importantly, I tell them you do not need to believe in God to play God. The actions are what are important. The Jewish philosopher Martin Buber said it this way: God does not want to be believed in, debated, and defended by us, but simply to be realized through us. See, regardless of what we believe, we can still act godlike. But the first step is getting to know God, because after all, you can't imitate what you don't know. So who is God? We have to ask, who is God? And when I rehearsed this, my wife told me that's the most frightening question a rabbi could ask halfway through a sermon. But luckily, this is going to be quite quick, because Moses asked that very question in the Torah. And I'll share with you God's response. You'll recognize it. In fact, Cantor, would you be willing to be the voice of God?
Absolutely.
So Moses asks God, "Who are you?" And God replies like this, we're told.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun, Erech Apayim, V'Rav Chesed V'Yemet, Notzer Chesed L'Alafim, Nose Avon V'Fesha, B'Chata'a V'Nakeh.
Thank you. It's a very good God. That Torah text might sound a little familiar. We sang it just earlier. It's called in our tradition the 13 attributes of God's goodness. And it's the basis for Judaism's understanding of who God is and how God acts. And every Rosh Hashanah and every Yom Kippur, we sing these verses from Torah over and over and over again before the open ark, as if we're saying, this is the essence of God's goodness. And therefore, this is how we must walk in the world. And the rabbis of antiquity made this point very clearly in the Midrash. How do we act in God's ways? They asked. And because they were rabbis, they went ahead and just answered their own question. They said, well, in the 13 attributes, God is called merciful and gracious, so we should be merciful and gracious. God is called righteous, and so we should be righteous. And on they went through all the attributes. Lily Montague, a leader of liberal Judaism, summarized it all very simply. She said, if you want to commune with God, seek to imitate God's goodness. So what are these 13 good attributes, and how do we embody them? Well, the first one is that God is all-powerful. So that's a tough one to imitate, I'll give you that. Right? How on earth are we supposed to embody that attribute? But we're taught we do it by playing God. Right? In a time when the Almighty is not splitting seas before our eyes, God is only as powerful as our actions on God's behalf. If Adonai is going to be all-powerful, then we must act on the rest of these attributes powerfully. God is counting on us. So if this first attribute is a summons to go play God, 2 through 13, that's the playbook. Now 2 and 3 go together. They say God shows compassion before and after we make mistakes. Therefore, we should strive to prevent those around us from making mistakes, and we should have empathy for folks who are trying to rectify the wrongs that they've done. Attribute 4 is that God provides for those in need. So we should look around us with an honest eye and ask ourselves who is struggling, because their needs are our responsibility. The 5th attribute is that God is kind. So we have to ask if we can look around and take that feeling of fellowship that we have for those within our own tribe and extend it out in ever-widening circles of concern. The 6th attribute is that God cares for future generations yet to come. To imitate this one, we have to adopt what I call a God's eye view, where we think not just in terms of tomorrow or the day after, not even in the span of our lifetime, but focus on the impact of our decisions on generations who are not yet born. The 7th attribute is that God acts with grace. We talk a little less about grace in Judaism than some of our co-religionists, but to embody it, we stop asking whether someone deserves our help. Our default assumption becomes that everyone is worthy of our care. The 8th attribute is that God is slow to anger. So we should embody patience, even in line at the DMV, even in line at the UPS store. I've seen some of you there. 9th, God is truthful. We're getting very countercultural here. But honesty and truth-telling, while not particularly in vogue, I'm here to tell you tonight, are godly. 10, 11, and 12 all have to do with forgiveness. They go like this: if we repent, and that's a big if we repent, but that's important, and it applies to all 3 statements to follow. God forgives us when we accidentally sin, when we disobey God, and even when we rebel against God. And therefore, if someone repents, we should strive to forgive those who unintentionally slight us, those who purposefully wrong us, and even those who cast themselves as our enemies. And that's most likely the teenagers in your homes. The 13th and final attribute is that God not only forgives, God also pardons. So we should try to restart relationships with those who have come to us seeking sincere forgiveness. That's all 13. None of them are particularly revolutionary. I would venture to say that we probably all strive to inhabit these good qualities. But the more we learn about the human mind, the more we know that while they run in concert with our hearts, they run counter to our inclinations. And our inclinations are very powerful. Therefore, it requires discipline, real discipline, to take what we know is right and turn it into habitual, yes, even godly practice. But Judaism and Jewish living provide the discipline that we need to make playing God routine. For instance, once we accept that one of the 13 attributes of God's goodness is to go and play God, we're left with 12 attributes to pursue. And that's a very convenient number, because we can take one trait and focus on it for a month. And if we work intensely month after month and year after year, we will get better and better at playing God. But that's not quite enough. Adonai does not want us to learn to be saints in solitude. It's not only about changing who we are. It's about changing who we are when we show up. You see, God shows up. All throughout our stories, God is showing up. And most remarkably, God shows up when the help is neither sought nor expected. On Rosh Hashanah, we read about how Hagar and Ishmael were in trouble, and they called out, not to the Ghostbusters, not even to God. They just called out in despair. And even though God wasn't addressed, God showed up. It's the same at the beginning of the Exodus. The Israelites are enslaved in Egypt, and they cry out, not to anyone specific, but again, God hears that call, and God shows up to help, shows up to do good. And in order to play God, we have to do the same. We can't hesitate. We can't say it isn't our business. We can't say someone more proximate will intercede. The person in pain shouldn't have to make an appeal to us. The grieving mourner shouldn't have to invite us to their door, and the hungry who roam our streets shouldn't have to beg. Jews play God by extending goodness without being asked. Rabbi Adam Kligfeld once put it, listen with your ear close and your heart closer to the voices of goodness in your tradition. Identify those voices of goodness as godliness and go make it more real and more visible in the world. Because we know more than ever that communities are sustained by individuals playing God. During COVID, our fellow members played God when they gathered groceries for elder neighbors, when they sewed masks for strangers because they couldn't be purchased, when they tracked down vaccination slots for folks who were most at risk. All throughout the year, our fellow members play God by feeding hungry New Yorkers, by mentoring underserved high school seniors, and by working with Central's efforts to reform the criminal justice system and meet the challenges of food insecurity. Our teens are playing God. They've formed the Central Climate Initiative. You'll hear more from them later. And they're doing all kinds of work to help sustain the world for a future generation. Torah tells us we are like God, so we might as well get good at it. Now, perhaps you're thinking, Rabbi, I do not have time to focus on a godly attribute every month. Or, in the messy world in which I live, it is not at all clear to me how to go and play God. I hear you. And despite those very real challenges, this commandment is too essential to our tradition to ignore. So when I need a shorthand, I rely on advice that my grandfather, Rabbi Ernst Lorge, Zichrono Livracha, used to share when someone would come to him with a dilemma. He would ask them, what is the loving thing to do? What is the loving thing to do? Because it's akin to asking, what is the godly thing to do? And if we answer it honestly 9 times out of 10, it'll lead us to walk in God's ways. So here, at the turning of the year, we once again face Judaism's grand command to each of us. Go play God. Be like God. Take God outside the confines of these walls, not by preaching about God's goodness, but by embodying it. And next year, when we meet again and I ask you, are you a God? Be ready to say, no, but I play God. In reality, not on TV. Each and every day, by doing tangible, physical, practical good for my neighbors and for strangers, and most especially for those who are not even expecting it.
turn now to page 106. I invite everyone to please rise. Please join me. Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice. Avinu Malkeinu, we have sinned against you. Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and on our children. Avinu Malkeinu, make an end to sickness, war, and famine. Avinu Malkeinu, make an end to all oppression. Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us for blessing in the book of life. Avinu Malkeinu, let the new year be a good year for us. Avinu Malkeinu, be gracious and answer us, for we have little merit. Treat us generously and with kindness, and be our help.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, חטאנו לפניך. אבינו מלכנו, חמול עלינו, ויעלול עלינו ותאפנו.
Avinu Malkeinu, וחרב ורעב, מעלינו. אבינו מלכנו, חלק
Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, kotveinu besefer chaim tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד,
Please be seated. I hope that most of you were already able to meet our new president, Dr. Shani Silverberg, on Rosh Hashanah when she greeted us. She is a brilliant doctor and an extraordinary human being. We could not be more fortunate that she has chosen to serve our congregation as our president and leader. I want to invite her up to share a few words with us tonight.
Yeah. They don't believe how short I am. I keep trying to tell them. Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see you here, and it's wonderful to not see all of you out, but know that you're all out there. There is nothing in my background that suggests that I would ever serve as a synagogue president. Never mind as president of one of the largest congregations in what we Canadians fondly called the States. Growing up in Montreal in the late 50s and 60s, I attended a Zionist socialist day school where we studied English and French subjects in the morning and Yiddish and Hebrew in the afternoon. We read the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, as a quasi-historical document. I was one of only 2 kids in my class whose parents did not have numbers tattooed on their arms, and we never, ever went to synagogue. My Jewishness was everywhere around me, in our family, in our home, in school, in camp, in our pride in the new nation of Israel. I didn't need a Jewish home, at least not one outside my parents' house and that of my insular Jewish Montreal community. Fast forward, in New York, the Jewish community was more synagogue-based. My husband and I were a Jewishly rootless young family with 2 kids, and we felt that it was important to affiliate. While we were shopping around for a synagogue, Rabbi Rick Jacobs, then senior rabbi of Westchester Reformed Temple, asked us if we would mind hosting a young rabbinic and cantorial intern in our home for the year. He assured us that she would be no trouble at all, and that in exchange, she would teach our sons, Zach and Nathaniel. And then he introduced us to Angela Buchdahl. No trouble indeed. Like so many of you, I found my Jewish home here at Central Synagogue. To me, one of the best things about Central is that we all have such different reasons for loving it. Some of us come because our families have been associated with the synagogue for generations. We have precious memories, and we love the place for them. Others have never belonged to a synagogue before. Some come for the music, others for the clergy, and some for our programs that educate those from the ages of 2 to 92. And some came because we welcomed them when other communities did not. This year, more than any other year, so many of you out there consider Central to be your Jewish home because even though you have never stepped foot in our sanctuary and live around the country or around the world in cities such as San Diego, Los Angeles, Nashville, and Martha's Vineyard, just to mention 4 places where my relatives live streamed Rosh Hashanah, or in one of the 87 countries around the globe where we live stream. Regardless of why you came to Central or how you came to it or why you treasure it, this institution depends on your support. Last year at this time, we were 6 months into a pandemic that we hoped would be in our rearview mirror by the time we got together to atone in 2021. And while things are indeed better than they were last year, we are far from done with this. We were so beautifully led through this crisis by our spiritual leader, Rabbi Buchdahl, and by Marcia Caban and her staff, who keep the synagogue functioning and excellent in every way. As John May, one of our beloved officers, described Central in the pandemic, while we were apart, Central brought us together. Central's clergy and staff worked tirelessly to shape-shift and innovate and bring us new forms of worship, and altered old programs to turn them into new programs to keep us in touch. These innovations were only possible because we had the infrastructure and the resources to support them. We are so grateful to each and every one of our members and our live stream donors who stepped up to support us last year. Unfortunately, as the pandemic improves, it turns out we are actually having increased costs and needs rather than decreased. When we found out that David Geffen Hall would not be available this year, and in fact would be much smaller once the renovation was done, we committed to Radio City to provide an option for in-person worship. And then the Delta variant hit the city. As disappointing as this has been, we couldn't imagine telling our congregation that there was no option for in-person worship if the public health situation permitted it. We also have increased costs associated with what I am calling the dual option. We are not, thankfully, in a COVID lockdown where everything has to be online as it was last year, but things are not normal yet either. And so we are investing in this year in making both in-person and online options for everything great. We are making sure services are wonderful for those of you sitting here in the sanctuary, but equally so for people who are live streaming and providing the production value that our online community has come to expect from us. Similarly, we are offering both in-person and online options for Hebrew School to over 600 students, because despite the increased costs, we couldn't imagine not engaging and educating our youth. The same holds true for our adult education programs. And finally, with the sad but clear increase in anti-Semitism in our country and in our city, as a prominent and visible congregation, we must and we are increasing our investment in security. So this year, we hope all of you will again step up. We need all of you to again step up. Central has been there for us, and Central will be there for us. I ask you, think about your Central moment. What was a time this year when Central did something that came through for you, that was important to you? Was it when we woke up one morning and realized that you had a meditation practice, even though you had absolutely sworn that meditation was not for you? Or was it when your granddaughter called to say that one-on-one Hebrew classes at Central was the best school ever? Or when your son's bar mitzvah was more meaningful than you ever could have imagined, despite stringent COVID restrictions? Or, as with so many of you this year, when you were able to say Kaddish for someone you loved as part of an online streaming community. I'll share my Central moments. First, listening to my 90-plus-year-old father belt out the Aleinu from his recliner in his Berkshire's home, singing along with the clergy. Second, weeping as Angela sang L'chilach under the chuppah at my son Zachary's wedding to Skylar, 30 people on the lawn instead of 300. And finally, hearing the Yiddish partisan song at my father's recent funeral. Central has been there for me and my family, and Central will be there for you. We need you to support Central so Central can support you if, when, and how you need it to. If I have learned anything as a physician in this pandemic, it is that we must anticipate the unexpected. Central has shown itself to be nimble in response to the events of the last 18 months, and I think more nimbleness will be required of us going forward. I feel certain that we are up to the task. I look forward to working with all of you to support Rabbi Buchdahl and our wonderful clergy and staff as we move from strength to strength. I wish each of you and your families a year of health and peace, and I thank you.
You all know that I've known Shani since I was a 21-year-old kid, and she was nice enough to let me squat in her home. Thank you, Shani. We've come a long way. Just a few announcements for this community. It would be very helpful to all of our awesome shamashim if you would leave your prayer books on your seats for our next service, which will be coming in. And we will hopefully be seeing all of you tomorrow at 10:30 at Radio City Music Hall. For those of you who are watching on live stream, services will begin here in the sanctuary at 10 a.m. Just a note, if you are live, that we invite you to stay all day with us. So if you're going to be joining us for the morning service, know that in the afternoon we will have a meditative moment with music starting at 1 o'clock. We will have a study session with Rabbi Rick Jacobs at 2:30, and we will have an opportunity at any point for you to be in the community house and to record a story for our Sharing Our Stories archival project. We hope that you will just come and stay all day and then join us for the afternoon as well. Now we turn to our moment of memory, page 108. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then, perhaps, to wisdom. From weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat. Until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Zichronam livracha, may the memories of our loved ones be a blessing. We rise together for Kaddish Yatom. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chaye echon u'v'yom echon u'v'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mavarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudisha brichu le'ela u'le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata ta'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Israel.
I don't know about you, but I just spent the whole service just thinking, wow, what amazing clergy I get to work with. Such pearls of wisdom and such transcendent music. Wow. Thank you for starting us with this holiday, especially with Kol Nidre.
And we feel that way about you every day, Rabbi
Thank you.
Bogdal.
Thank you.
Every day.
Thank you. So let us close out this beautiful night with a psalm, Adon Olam. Actually, it's a piyut, a liturgical prayer. The last line, one of my favorites, Biyado afkid ruchi, be'eti shan ve'ayira, be'im ruchi geviati Adonai li, velo ira. I trust my soul in your hands, God, and I will not be afraid.
Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Le'ed Nasa B'chefso Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Ve'acharei Kichlot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora Ve'hu Haya Ve'hu Hove Ve'hu Yeh B'tifara Ve'hu Echad Ve'en Sheni Lehamshila Lehachmira B'li Reshit B'li Tachlit Ve'lo Ha'oz Ve'hamizrah Ve'hu Eli Ve'chai Go'ali B'tzur Chevli Ve'etzara Ve'hu Nisi U'manosli Ve'nat Kosi B'yom Ekra Be'yado Afkid Ruchi Ve'eti Shan Be'ayira Ve'im Ruchi Geviati Adonai li Ve'lo ira Ve'lo ira
Gemar Tov and good Yontif. We will join in singing this beautiful piyut, this liturgical poem. O God of awesome deeds,